going to walk through my thought process. Like, how do I take a data set and then and kind of turn it into something else? We'll discuss design choices as well. And then we'll actually build some stuff in Tableau. Maybe you'll learn something that I do in Tableau, maybe not. But I think walking through that process will be helpful. And then we'll look at some before and after pictures of the original visualization and the angle that I took with it. And keep in mind, in most of these cases, I don't actually just make over the original. I am actually going to do something different, take a different angle, look at a different insight. So let's do it. I'm going to jump over to Tableau. And Serena or Ken, can you just verbally tell me if you can see Tableau now?
Yes, sir.
All right, perfect. Okay. All right. So the first day, well, hopefully we'll be able to see Excel as well. So the first data set I'm going to talk about is the university costs. So this data was for European countries, and it listed the country, and it was the costs for universities. So there was total living costs, and there were average tuition costs. And then there was a total. So this is the total. So living costs, tuition, and total, right? So let's just jump into Tableau and start exploring that. So even though we have that spreadsheet, I like to explore things in Tableau. So this is actually listed under state for some reason. So I've got all these different countries. I'm going to add in this yearly costs here for tuition, and then this yearly costs. And by the way, if you want to build a table and do measure names and measure values, you can just drop that right on top and it'll create that for you. So we have yearly tuition, and let's make that a little taller, tuition and living costs. And then let's add this total on here as well. So the first thing I kind of wanted to walk through is one of the first steps I always take when I'm looking at any data set is just making sure it makes sense, right? So what I started to do is just kind of given this the sniff test, if that makes sense. 2,800 plus 12,6 is about 50. That looks about right. 3,000 plus 13,000, 16,000. If we look at Bulgaria, 431 plus 7,000 equals not 9,000. And by the way, this is exactly how I downloaded the data. So 431 plus 700 certainly does not total up to be 9,000. So this is why I was like, oh, there certainly seems like there's some issue in this data. And then I saw then these average tuition and then yearly costs, and then the nomenclature is a little bit weird. So I was like, maybe it's not supposed to add up, but that doesn't make sense to me. So what I did was just create a calculation that just added the two, right? The yearly tuition plus the living costs. And let's throw that on my view. And we can now see that 431 and 7,000, we got the 7,400. So most of these are close. These are really close. That one's not close. That's off by a pretty big percentage. That's off by 2,000. So something's weird. Something's wrong with this data, right? I went back to the original article and saw where they grabbed the data, and it is in fact listed exactly like they brought it in. But it's certainly something that would give me, make me concerned. What's interesting is, so what I next did was, let me just sum up these. Maybe these rows, you're not going to imagine somebody doing this in Excel and not knowing how to sort properly. And these rows didn't get sorted with these rows. And so let's just total these up and see if the grand total that I calculate is the same grand total that they calculate. And guess what? It is. It's $3 off. That's probably a rounding thing. But their total living costs, or their totals figure in their data, 422,255. My calculated total, 422,252. I do, in fact, think that they had some weird sorting program in Excel, or a problem in Excel. These don't line up properly with each other. So I thought that was interesting. And oddly, I didn't see anybody else call it out. Doesn't mean somebody certainly could have done that. But I just thought that was interesting because the very first step in this process, we get stuck with unclean data, which is what we're used to all the time. So this is really important that you're actually spending time doing that. Not just, at work, but also when you're doing this, it's good practice. So, all right. So what we're going to do is just move on as if that wasn't a matter. I'm going to use my my calculated total versus any of these other columns. I'm just going to calculate total and assume that these are right, even though that's obviously very concerning from the get-go. Let's just start. Maybe I'll just create a map. So again, it's listed as state for some reason. So let me just drop state on detail, and we start to create this map. We could maybe change it to a map, and then we'll use this calculated total. I'll add color, and then maybe for me, I would just get rid of everything else. You could uncheck all these boxes, or you can just be lazy like me and just slide the wash out. What are these unknown locations? Okay, there's 2 unknown. I'm not going to deal with those right now, but you could deal with those as well. I'm just going to hide it. So we have this map. I guess I should show the original. I have it up here somewhere. Oh, too many things open. So here is the original visualization that they shared. So it's just a map, right? It's just a map with this sort of scale here. So that's what I created. And I think maybe I'm going to make this, let me just get rid of the opacity. So if I were to say what sticks out to anybody, and I won't ask anybody to speak up, they're probably going to say, these countries right here, they're big and they're dark blue, right? That's what's going to, you're going to see these before you see this. You're going to see this before you see the Netherlands or Denmark. And the reason is they're bigger in area. They're bigger, or at least with this map projection, they are. And they stick out like a sore thumb. So I'm going to jump over to a different blog post that I wrote a long time ago. And this is about a hex map or any kind of tile map. And I wrote about this problem with the United States. If I were to show you this map, you're going to see Montana before you see New Jersey. But Montana has a population of 1 million people, where New Jersey has a population of 9 million people. This little state has 9 times the population of Montana. Yet the area of Montana is like, 15 times the size of New Jersey. So this tends to carry this visual weight, right? And you see it first. You don't notice it as you don't notice New Jersey like you do Montana. So a lot of times when we're looking at just a state by state comparison, using a normal filled map or a choropleth map isn't necessarily the right choice. And in this blog post I just wrote about hex maps, how we can kind of reduce that just by using a hex map or a tile map. So in this case, I think the same exact thing is happening. These small countries, they are kind of overwhelmed by these large countries. And it does so happen the large countries are the darker ones as well. So I think I wanted to solve that. So what I did was, I live in the US. I use hex maps all the time for the United States. What I started to look around was, did somebody create a hex map coordinates that I can sort of just do this scatter plot thing with for Europe? And sure enough, they did. So I found this website, statsexplorer.blogspot.com, and they created hex coordinates and it's really small. I don't know why that's so small, but they created hex coordinates for Europe. So what I did was grab those from this website, and I loaded them into Tableau, and I created a tile map. And the fields were just column. And how we create tile maps, if you're not using a shapefile, it's just a scatter plot. So I've got a column and a row that essentially calls out these individual locations. Then if I put state on detail, and we can start to see these coordinates. And I'm not super familiar with where they are, but I think we need to reverse one of these axes. I can't remember which one, but I think that looks right. Yeah, well, maybe it's this one as well. I'm not going to spend too much time on that. So then I just made this a circle mark, and what I did was take this calculated total and put it on color, and calculated total and put it on size. I wanted to kind of double encode that. Now I think, do I have this messed up? I do. Whatever. I'm an idiot when it comes to over here. Anyways, so what we kind of see here is these things aren't, even though it's harder to tell what those countries are, I think we're not having that, we're not losing that having that problem with that visual weight where these countries just, come out to us because they're bigger, right? Ultimately, what I decided to do is a combination of the two. So I created this tile map so that each country would be sort of equal. And then I did a colored them based on higher tuition versus lower tuition or not reported in the data at all. And then I did color and I did size. So I think we get this sort of dual information to help us understand. If you were to quickly look at this chart, you could tell that the highest, without the bar chart and without this map, you could easily tell that Denmark and Iceland have the highest two tuition or university costs, just by looking at that very, very quickly. Because I wanted some precision, I added a bar chart. And normally I would not use this sort of gradient color scale on a bar chart, but I wanted it to tie back to the map, which I did use that gradient scale. I thought was important in the map. And just because this kind of looks just like a blob of circles in generally the right location, I added this just standard choropleth map like they used in the original visualization to sort of help guide you. And as I hover over, the UK, it then highlights that mark throughout. So I think that generally speaking, this map is probably more understood by the average human being. But when we really want to have more understanding of more precision, or for building a dashboard, I think it's important to help remove some of those problems with a standard map and use something like a tile map. And we could use a hex map instead. I did that over here. I didn't like the way it looked. Let me just change the background to white so we can see it. So it looked something like that. Probably could be cleaned up a little bit. I just didn't love the way it looked. I wanted to have the circles to where they could actually overlap and kind of be sized appropriately. So, all right. So that's what I did with the university costs. Let's look at the next one. This was the New Year's resolutions. Let's jump over to look at that data. So this was on Inside Out Mastery, and it was 19 surprising New Year's resolution statistics for 2024. They had a couple of different visuals in here, whether people had resolutions at all, some other information, but this is the one that I focused on, and it was just those New Year's resolutions. And it showed a bar for blue, a bar for men, and a bar for women. First thing I would say is all Britons. Well, let's look at the data first, and then we'll get to my point. It's not the one. So let's look at this data. Here's the resolution. This is exactly like it was downloaded, by the way. I would not make a spreadsheet look like that. The resolution, it had a percentage of people that made that New Year's resolution for both male, female, and then 4 different age groups. What you see in the original visualization is this all Britons, right? Well, it's not even in the data. I don't know if they just didn't supply it or what, but it's not in the data. So we can't look at that. So let's just eliminate that as an option, that black bar. The other thing that I noticed just immediately is just that stereotypical blue and pink colors, right? And I think that, we've really gotten away from using blue and pink for men and for women, just because it sort of just extends those stereotypes, right? So I would certainly recommend trying not to utilize those colors. If you have a legend, it should be clear. Good labeling, it should be clear. So how I started working through this was really simple. I just wanted to create the original. So I'm going to put it on columns, the resolution. Now we've got, when we look at the data, we have male and female as different measures. It's not really how we love Tableau to work. We kind of want Tableau the data in Tableau to be tall versus wide, right? It'd be nice if we had a field that said, male or female, and then we had a value, and then the male and female measures were stacked and in one field. But it's not. So because of that, it's going to force us to use, and most likely use measure names and measure values. So I'm going to throw measure values out here. That looks terrible right now. So I'm going to get rid of everything that's not male and female. Slide that off. And then these are like let's put measure names on color. So now I've got female in purple and male in this green. We don't want them to be stack bars. That makes absolutely no sense at all. So let's take measure names and let's just put it out here on rows. You know what? Let's put it out here on columns. So now we've got this grouped bar that looks somewhat similar to the original, right? One thing I hate with original is looks like this Excel, like angled labels. In mine, they're rotated all the way around, which makes me have to turn my head like this to read. Can't stand that. So let's just rotate this entire chart. I don't know about you, but I hate this. I think it looks terrible. I think it's hard to understand. It's easy to do comparisons, I think, within, but it's hard. My eyes just are hurting looking at this. And maybe partially the colors are causing some problems, but it's just not a very good chart. So what I wanted to do is look at not only how people are answering, but I wanted to understand the difference between how male and females answered these questions or make their New Year's resolutions. So when I'm thinking about tracking differences across these different dimensions, I think about a barbell chart. So we're going to build a barbell chart with this data. So I'm going to put resolution up on rows. Let's just fit the height here. And I hate when they wrap around. Hopefully it looks okay on one row. Yeah. Again, we're going to use measure names and measure values. So I'm going to put measure values up here. And just like before, I'm going to get rid of anything that's not male or female. Again, this is doing a stack bar. I'm going to change them to circle marks. And then I'm going to, and I probably should have mentioned this before. Instead of dragging measure names and all the fields from over here, I like to use the fields that are on my view. And what I'll do is I'll just grab that and drag it. But if I were to grab that and drag it, it would move that pill. If I hit control, it'll duplicate that pill. And in this case, it wouldn't have mattered, but I'll do that a lot. You'll probably see me do that a lot today. So now we have, these different percentages. And by the way, this is coming in as a whole number, not a percentage. We should probably divide that value by 100 to get a percentage. I'm going to totally cheat and edit this axis. That's not what I want to do. I'm going to totally cheat and format this. And I'm going to go to the axis. There's numbers. Let's go to number format. And in this prefix suffix, I'm just going to add percentage as the suffix. So now we have these sort of comparisons. We got female here and men here. I think this is still hard to read. So I think we want to finish off the barbell chart by connecting the two. I'm going to duplicate this measure names and this measure values. Again, I'm going to hit the control key to do it. So now we have two axes. On the second one, I'm going to make this a line mark. It's going to draw a line however Tableau thinks we want the line drawn. That's of zero value at all. I'm going to do that control thing again. I'm going to drag this thing onto path. So now it's basing this on these individual resolutions. So let's dual axis this. Let's synchronize as we would. I think this is starting to look a little bit better. Maybe we size this up to see these marks a little bit better. So I think what we start to see here really easily now that we've connected that barbell is the resolutions in which men and women had larger differences. Now, I will tell you, this is raw difference. So it makes more sense probably that there's going to be a greater raw difference from these ones that had higher percentages, right? These are the highest answered, ones that highest, most popular resolution. It makes sense there's probably going to be a longer bar. If we looked at percent difference, maybe that value would be different. But I decided to just look at the raw difference. And the one other thing that I wanted to know was, okay, we see these differences. We can see there's a big difference in doing more exercise and decorating and renovating or pursuing a career ambition and saving more money. But what I wanted to know is a quick insight, because that's what we do with data visualization. I wanted to know who is more, right? We can see female more here, female more here, men here more here, but I just didn't think it was instantaneous. So what I did was just create a calculation of male minus female. So we're just taking the difference between the two. And then I actually just, I can't remember exactly what I took the sign. The sign is, if you never use the function sign, it's going to give you a -1 for negative values, a 0 for 0 values, and a +1 for positive values. It's just this quick way to say, is it negative or positive, right? So then what I did was just take this sign and put it on the color, and I'm going to change it to discrete here. And I've assigned the negative ones the same colors that I would. So if women's was larger, I made them a -1. If men were larger, it's that +1 in green. And if it's the same, it's gray. Notice the line is on top of these circle marks, so we can just change the order by swapping them and put it to the back. So what we have now is this bar. Instead of that sort of gradient color bar, we have the bars now colored based on who's the larger. What I did to make this easy was just to, I'm doing it on the wrong one, doing it on the circle mark. Let's back that off. Let's go to the line mark. I reduced the opacity, and then I brought this mark up to be much larger. And then what we have is this really nice, in my opinion, this really nice chart that gives you a ton of information. You can tell the ones that were the most popular resolutions. You can tell when there's this big difference between male and female. And then just quickly, just with this line mark behind it, you can quickly tell who's larger, right? We can tell this one's purple, that females answer this more often than men. And I just thought those were some interesting insights. What I ultimately did was I added some flair to it with just this sort of New Year's colors, right? You know, I think about a New Year's party with the black hats and the gold, hat, whatever. And so I sorted this by largest differences. So New Year's resolutions, largest differences between male and female. And this, I did that by the absolute value. So what was just the difference, that raw difference between them? And you can see, I think a really insightful chart is, looks like females are more interested in getting, healthier, right? Doing more exercise. Men are more interested in career ambitions. And this is based on the data. I'm not saying that's the case. Women more interested in renovating that part of the house. Men more interested in volunteering. Kind of surprised by that. More interested in raising money for charity. So this is the biggest difference between them. I just thought this was a really insightful chart versus just this bar that just says this is the value, right? So, all right, the next one, highest paid athletes. Let's look at that data. So I've seen this data before. Actually helped somebody years ago, an intern that worked for me, create a visualization based on the exact same data set from ESPN, but it was, I guess, 6 years ago. All it is the top 50 highest paid athletes. It's their name, their rank, the sport, what they earned on field, what they earned off the field, total on the field and then off the field. And then I added these in Excel. Could have easily done this in Tableau, but I was just curious what those percentages were. So when I started to visualize this, a lot of times I just want to kind of see the data in raw form, right? So let's look at this, and I'm going to create a dot strip plot, and I'm going to do it on total earnings. So I'm going to put total earnings on columns. Let's put name on detail. And then so we can start to kind of see this distribution, right? Let's bring this down a little bit. Those are all over each other. So let's bring the opacity down, maybe add a circle mark behind it. So we can kind of start to see this distribution. And as they get higher, they tend to, we see that sort of thin out. Cristiano Ronaldo, Lionel Messi, lots of Mbappe, you got all those soccer players, then LeBron. we in America don't think about soccer being this super popular sport here, but it is across the world. Obviously, top three are soccer players. But since these things are overlapping each other, it's hard to see them. So I would like to change this to a jitter plot. Since this is a file based and it's extracted, I can use the random function, right? So I'm going to talk about random. Hopefully, if we do Tableau conference presentation, I'll talk about this concept a little bit more. So now we can kind of see that spread a little bit. We can see how many marks are here versus when they were just kind of stacked on top of each other. So in this, I had lots of different ideas on how I want to look at it, but you know what? I just was thinking, I just be interested in kind of some interesting facts about those top 50, right? And probably the most interesting fact, and I'll drop that on there, one female. In the top 50 highest paid athletes, only one female. Anybody guess who that is? I won't hover over it. Maybe I already did hover over it. It's Serena Williams. And if you look at it, she's at the bottom of the list. She's at the bottom of the list. She'll come back up here in a second, and we'll talk a little bit more about it. But kind of like, I don't know, shocking to me. Somebody else created a visualization. I think it was Agata Kederick. She created a visualization on Tableau Public for this data set, and it was called Only One Woman. And that's it's kind of depressing, right? But I started to look at other things that I thought were interesting. I looked through some old lists and I found the newcomers. So the newcomers, let's just kind of hover over some of these. Bryson DeChambeau, Cam Smith, Brooks Koepka. If anybody knows sports, those people, I don't know who Patrick Reed is, but there's a Sergio, Scotty Scheffler. So Sergio, and I'm pretty sure it's these four: Sergio Garcia, Bryson DeChambeau, Cam Smith, and Brooks Koepka all joined that live tour, that golf tour, are paying people insane amounts of money to play for them. And they are newcomers to this list because they got that big just influx of cash. So I thought that was interesting. The other thing I wanted to look at was, all right, who's making money on the field and who's making money off the field. So I created these calculations to look at, all right, who made less, and don't ask me why I chose 3%, but who made less than 3% of their earnings on the field? Drag that on colors. There was only three people. Roger Federer, I don't know much about tennis, but I'm assuming he has retired recently. I don't know, or stopped playing. But Serena Williams did. So she only made, I don't have the total. Let me just put this on here on the tooltip here. Oh, she moved around on me. Serena Williams made 45 million off of the field and only 300,000 on the field. So she played a tournament or something and made a few $100,000, but she made almost all of her money on off the field. Tom Brady retired. He's got lots of promoting lots of products, so making a lot of money still, but not making money on the field. And then Roger Federer, as I said. So, and then I thought, okay, what about the reverse? I thought the reverse would be as well. So less than 3% off the field. And I did something wrong. Less than 30% off the field. That's a label. I don't want that. Let's do this. So I started to look at this, and the very first one I looked at was Deshaun Watson. If you know NFL football, you know he's like one of the most hated people in sports for all the garbage he did. And it's no surprise that people aren't picking him up for endorsements. He's not doing a bunch of car commercials and Nike commercials because people don't like the guy. He makes a big contract in football, even though he barely played this year, but he's not making any money off promotions. The other guys, I don't know. John Wall, he played for Kentucky. I don't know if he's a problem, but I thought some of these were interesting as well. Phil, I'm kind of surprised Phil Mickelson's not making money off the field, but Deshaun Watson was this kind of cool one that stuck out to me. So I thought about just doing this sort of jitter plot, as we would call it. But then I thought, well, if you guys know Tristan, I don't know how to pronounce his last name. He has this tool that he has on his website, lawdataviz.com. where you can actually create these kind of out of the box visuals. One of them is a bee swarm. So I thought, well, maybe I'll try this bee swarm plot. So what you do is you upload your data, and or do you upload your data? I think, yeah, you upload your data, and let's just do it real quick. Well, generally what you do is you upload your data, and then it spits back a TWBX with that in there. Fingers crossed that this gets just tied right into Tableau so that we're not having to sort of take these additional steps. Because you imagine if we were doing this for work, then every update we'd have to do a manual update. It's not flowing through. So let's hope that they integrate this with Tableau. But let's give this a try, see if we can do it on the fly. In fact, by the way, I didn't really practice any of these builds, so you see me mess up, and that's all part of what we do, right? So let's go to data sets, and let's pick top 50 athletes. So you see what it's done is it's built this this chart, this bee swarm, total earnings. This is Cristiano, this is Messi, right? This is Mbappe, and you have these different options. You can change some of these views. You can change the size. Do you want it to be a constant, or do you want it to be based on one of these metrics? Let's just make it constant. Let's size that up a little bit, right? You can change sort of like these different, like he calls it collide, like how many pixels, how far away they are. And then what you do is you just literally just download it to Tableau desktop, open this thing up. Hopefully you open it up. Yep, I opened it twice. And you have this bee swarm, right? So pretty cool. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. And then what we could do is start, adding different stuff to change the colors. That's what I ended up doing. All I did was ultimately show the different kind of insights that I saw. Females, only one, right? People with less than 3% of on-field earnings, people less than 3% off-field, and the first-timers. Just thought it was nice to present that as some interesting insights into this particular data. All right, I have been talking for about 45 minutes. I'm going to wrap up pretty quickly. The last one that I looked at was world population data. I'll show you that set. I didn't come in here with any preconceived ideas on what I was going to do. I just used Tableau to explore the data, and what you see is it's a list of hundreds of countries, the population in 2023, and then it looks at these changes by year, the percent change, net change, and a lot of other stuff, including ages and the share of the total population, even land. So I thought that there's probably tons of cool, interesting insights in this. So I was excited to explore it. So let's just jump in here and let's try. I'm revealing secrets here. What I did was I did a dot strip plot. So let's look at, I think the field is yearly change. So this is the change, the percentage change from one year to the next. And this is literally the first thing I started with. So I put yearly change out there, and then I put the country out on detail. And if you see what I see, something's crazy. Like most of your marks are right here. In fact, let's do the random thing again to see how many marks we have. Almost everything in this sort of just barely, small decrease to a small increase, right? And it makes sense. Our populations are going up, so most of the numbers are. Oops, I moved that. I hate when I do that. Let's move that back. Most of our are going to be, slightly larger, right? But the insight is really obvious. Like, what is this down here? This one that lost, almost 8% of their population. That's scary. And you might have guessed it. It's Ukraine. Ukraine, lost a lot of people. A lot of people left the Ukraine due to war. So I created a fairly simple visualization. I felt like when I saw this immediately, how could I ignore that, right? I do believe that this data set is rich enough to have lots of really crazy insights. I wanted to look at, population by area and things like that. I just thought that would be interesting. But this, for me, was just like, how could I ignore it? So I did a very simple visualization. It's not super simple. I created, I binned up these percentages, and I created this sort of unit histogram here to where you can see all these people around 0% or 1, 2, 3% increases, a few with 1% decreases, and then this one out there all by itself with 0%. It's a sad situation. They lost and from 2022 to 2023, they lost almost 3 million people, which is almost 7.5% of their population. Not that I need to dwell on this anymore. If you're curious how I made this map, it's a bunch of layers. So this is actually a transparent map. Then I have an image on top of that. Got a bunch of stuff. I had an image on top of a map. So I had like a layer of a map and then an image that kind of cut out that circle, and then another transparent map on top of it. So you could actually with it. Not that you need to interact with this. That's a technique that I did with Lindsay Betts et al. In our Cheetah collaboration we did 4 or 5 years ago. So, all right, that's really it. Hopefully that was like insightful to some degree. Just some before and afters, the original, and then my version. Again, I think helps you kind of see the degrees and remove that visual weight while also understanding where those countries lie. I think a lot easier to do these comparisons. Totally two different things I'm showing here. Here's just kind of focused on the resolution. This is focused on the differences. But I think this is a lot easier way to read it, and certainly, in my opinion, more insightful. This is just a table. Highest paid athletes. The table would probably be a lot better than mine if you just want to see who is the top 10, right? Or if you just wanted to find somebody, a lot better than the B Swarm. But I think this is just a bit more interesting to kind of pull out those additional insights and to see where they lie. And that one of those examples is the fact that there's only one female, which is just terrible. But the fact is they're most of their earnings, they're at the bottom, and they predict that she's going to fall off that list next year. So likely next year will be 50 males in the top 50 list. So different purposes here. And then the last one, again, just another table, rich with data and probably tons of insights. But just a quick look at the view using Tableau, just a quick exploration of that data really showed this problem with Ukraine. So in just 4 examples, we were able to find problems with the data, and address those problems. We were able to, utilize Tableau to actually explore data. I do so much of building dashboards in Tableau, and I think about my old job. We had a lot of data scientists that only use Tableau for visual exploration, right? And it's just such a powerful tool when you can take millions and millions of rows and find insights quickly just by dragging and dropping a few pills, right? So we used Tableau to explore. We created what I think were more effective visuals, and we got some practice using a bunch of different tricks in Tableau. So yeah, if you like that, I'd recommend trying Makeover Monday. If you've done it before, go out and try it again. If you haven't done it, go try it for the first time. It's great for learning and training. It's great for, sharing and being inspired. And then it's great for all that stuff I just talked about, dealing with unclean data, learning data visualization from others, kind of in that joint community, learning Tableau. And I think through it, you end up making some friends that probably be friends for life. So I always say I could go to pretty much any country in this world and have somebody I could have dinner with, because I've been involved in that community. And part of that is that Makeover Monday community.